Welcome to the Weekend Must Watch on Intercut, the weekly show going through all the movies, TV, and entertainment that people just can't cut away from. This week in movies, all those Evil Dead trailers finally stop as Rise drops in theaters with images so gory only half pop up on Google.
Open up now.
Netflix made a Mighty Morphin special with half the Rangers, Apple spent more time on the cameos while they ghosted their script, and Ari Aster came early with his Mother's Day movie.
Oh my God.
As always, I'm your co-host Arturo Zurita, and joining me for Los Amigos Movies, it's Zachary Shevich. We do Mondays because on Thursdays is when we're free. We've got that scheduled time to do hits on HBO characters, beloved HBO characters. A lot of people are claiming Barry's not a comedy anymore, but this last episode, I think, was the funniest episode they've had in a while.
Pretty hysterical, although they have dropped that like signature horn open from the intro, so like it kind of you can chart this progressing seriousness of the show through their dropping of that goofy music. But I mean, that's the thing about the jokes in Barry is they may be a little bit more few and far between now that we're in season 4. When they hit, they're hysterical and absurd and just as funny as it's ever been, I feel like.
Yeah, no, Barry's been killing it. Succession's been killing it. We'll have a bunch of those TV specials that we'll be talking about. We have a bunch of streaming stuff. We have a bunch of theatrical stuff as well. You made it out to go see Beau Is Afraid this weekend now that it's been released. You caught it last week. You went to the Lincoln Square IMAX theater because he has an exclusive IMAX release that nobody can get a hold of if you're not living in New York or LA. Like, one theater's playing it for us, but Jimmy Cameron decided to re-release Avatar on a weekend where we have a director coming up with another movie. We needed more original stuff out in IMAX theaters to play. And I was able to catch a screening early on. It was an arm and a leg to go see it at Regal City North near us. It's where we saw Nope together. And it looked pretty cool. That's half the size of the theater you have in New York, though. So you had probably the best experience in watching it in terms of a theater. I don't know if you had any goodies that they gave out for you. When I went, it was a lot.
Yeah,
bro,
they sent us home empty-handed.
Oh. Well, they sent me with some PJs, bro. They're not as knitted as his were, but the limited edition.
Not quite monogrammed for you.
No, yeah, they're not silky.
You don't have the silk.
I just love though how all the merch that has been happening with them does do the MW stuff, which without getting into too much spoilers, isn't really a company. It's a company within the world of Beau Is Afraid. But A24, if they're gonna give you the budget of a little small tiny Marvel movie, they're gonna get their merch out some way. I then went to the Alamo because we had gone to a Cubs game and the Cubs had a really good game. The next time you come over, I might have to take you to a Cubs game. This is what they serve their beer in.
I still never been to Wrigley.
It's the most ridiculous thing, bro. You got to come. it's going to be a good time. But they opened up an Alamo Draft House right next to Wrigley. And I saw they posted these up on A24 to sell. I was a slowpoke. I missed a hat. So if anybody snatched up a hat, please let me know. Because I ended up with these freebies over at the Alamo Draft House. It's the keychain that they sell with it. So I almost have everything for the collectibles for Beau Is Afraid.
Nice.
And maybe an understanding of the movie because this is the most confusing movie to have come out. You talked about it briefly last week. How is it sat with you?
You know, I think it's such a like huge, assaultive, crazy, maximalist experience. You know, Ari Aster is throwing every type of anxiety you can think of at the screen at you, that it is so overwhelming. I don't know if it feels like easy to wrap your arms around. So I definitely left the theater in a bit of like a shell-shocked, unable to fully process its state. I don't feel like it completely confused me in terms of the main trajectory of the story. I feel like that is actually pretty easy to explain. But there's all these. I mean, I've been describing it as like a Jewish version of the what is it, Christmas Story? Or no, what is it?
Carol?
With the Christmas Carol with the ghosts of Christmas past, future, and present, because he kind of goes on these visions of his past, future, and present. It's just that
Yes.
it has this sort of like cruel twist of fate that feels a little bit more anxiety motivated than like the optimism of a Christmas Carol. You know that,
Yeah.
but like while I do feel like there is kind of like that through line that I felt like I got and I understood, there are just all these tangents and all these moments and all these just eccentricities that Ari Aster puts into the film that I don't know if I could even begin to start and try and parse. Although, I guess we got to try, right?
We have to try. I'm excited for it. There's like no footage out there, but I know we want to work on some spoiler stuff later on in the week. So, in terms of recommending this movie, if you've seen Hereditary, I still think that's his most. It's one of my personal favorites. I think it's the most accessible. I hate using that word, but I mean, time wise, it accessibly is the easiest movie to watch. Midsommar, I know, had some people a little bit more on edge. They weren't really sure how to feel about that movie. I think it is one of the best breakup movies. This is going to be the most difficult one of his. I can't say like, yo, it's Saturday night, go take the whole family, kids, everybody to go see Beau Is Afraid. Because it's 2 hours and 59 minutes. You feel it. It is definitely segmented into parts. After seeing it 2 times, I'm rocking with it, man. Look,
Yeah.
I feel like this is his. He's at that point where we're getting all these directors getting on the 3rd movie. Nope, as well, being a 3rd movie for Jordan Peele. You have several directors from Eggers to even, I'd say, with Barbarian. These movies where directors who have done a lot of comedy begin with horror, only to then kind of go full circle and come back to doing this almost dark comedy-esque type thing that I honestly loved. I think the easiest part to recommend is the first act of this movie. It's in this headspace where you can't tell if it's how he perceives the world to be or if the world is this loony. Either way, I was in it. It's got this tone where you just take everything to the max. Like when you're a little kid, this is like a guy who's never grown up. You're a little kid and your mom doesn't get home in time and it's 6.
Exactly.
By the time it's 6:01, you think the worst thing possibly happened. And that's this whole movie.
I mean, it's the experience of living through the world through the shoes of somebody who's been taught to be afraid of everything in the world. And maybe no part better exemplifies that, like you said, than that whole beginning section when Beau is in his apartment in the city, and the city is like this Fox News hellscape, It's like
it's what Martin Scorsese said it was.
It's like what every like person who thinks that living in the city is like a constant slalom through drug crime and stabbings. That's what their vision of urban life is like. Yeah, right. But it's just so funny because it's so like it's so heightened in a way that like even though Ari is a filmmaker who's really good at poking at your nerves in a way that unsettles and frightens you, here he's doing it in a way that it's like sometimes there's a therapy and exercise there's a exercise in therapy called a worry well, where basically you're supposed to like think about your deepest biggest worries, like the biggest fears you have, and sometimes in articulating them you realize how ridiculous you are. Like if you think like, oh, I'm gonna mess this up and my boss is gonna punch me in the face, like absolutely not. That's not gonna happen. But like you can
make
still
yourself
sort of have
believe
that anxiety about it. Right. This movie is that experience for 3 hours.
Yes. And as miserable as that can be, it's so effectively well done, in my opinion.
Funny. Yeah,
it is hysterical. And I'm a person who, when you rewatch Hereditary and Midsommar, I think those movies are hysterical. He has been doing rescreenings now that he has presented a comedy, and people are like, Ari, did you know your last movies are funny? And he's just sitting there like, yeah, I've kind of been. I saw you go back and watch a lot of his short films. This dude isn't he's goofy. His comedy is juvenile to the point that I was perplexed by some of the
you've got
some of these shorts,
short
bro.
called Tino's Dick Art. Like, come on.
It's funny because people consider him like the Criterion dude, right? Like, oh, he's there in the closet picking up the. Nah, man.
So sophisticated.
Tell him what the short is.
Tino's dick fart really works.
There's an Easter egg to this in the movie as well.
Is it what in Beau Is Afraid?
In Beau Is Afraid, there's an Easter egg
Do
to
they have
this
the
movie.
device or something?
It's well, I don't want to spoil too much in it, but I would say that
Mm.
even in reverse, there is a Beau Is Afraid Easter egg in Tino's dick fart. It's just a
Ooh.
whole expanded universe. What can you say? There's a lot of theories we can get into. We definitely want to do a spoiler one later on in the week. But in terms of recommending this movie, I'll easily any day of the week say go watch Hereditary. If you've been in a bad relationship, I'd be iffy to recommend Midsommar. I don't know who to pitch Beau Is Afraid to. It may be too difficult to watch in theaters for some people, but I do recommend catching it at some point because this
Yeah.
is a movie where you need to reflect on it with your own insecurities, your own doubts, and whatever makes you guilty. I think in due time, people are going to look back on it and really appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
But at 3 hours, it is a gruesome experience.
Yeah. Did it
And a
exhaust
heavy
you?
one.
Because I definitely,
Yes.
as much as I appreciated and was kind of awed by it, like by hour two, it is very exhausting.
There's technically 5 segments, but really it's three that you kind of have that beginning moment, the moment when he goes out into the world, and not spoiling how everything goes, but there's that middle part where you see a lot of colors coming to fruition that you see
Yeah.
in the trailer. I
It
was
gets a little more
a little gone by
fantastical.
that. Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
By the second time, that was probably one of my favorite sequences.
Mm.
So it's one of those where it's asking the audience to kind of give a little, to come back and return to the movie. At three
Yeah.
hours, that's difficult for mainstream audiences to do. But I think in due time, once all the explainers are out there, I think a lot of people are going to be
Right.
able to connect things and appreciate the movie more.
I mean, I generally find like the experience of watching a movie sometimes can be more difficult that first time when you're trying to figure out where it's going, especially with a long
Mm.
film like that where you really don't know where the journey is going to end. And then when you are able to revisit it as you have, like, and this is going to lead to that, which is going to lead to the next thing, it all makes a little more sense and flows a little bit better. So, yeah, maybe it's too much for some people to sit in a theater and get assaulted like that for 3 hours. But there's a lot that is really worthwhile here. And especially if you're just like excited by the
Yeah.
ability of a filmmaker to push on your buttons and make you uncomfortable, this is a really must see movie. I mean, I think I said this last week too, but this is the film that has most boldly dared to get an F cinema score since Mother. Like it just
Yes.
does not care what you think about it.
And I love Mother. If you can catch this in an IMAX, please do so. There's some great sound
Yeah.
design. It also has to do with the story because you're getting
So
into
many
his mind.
details.
And
Shiva
Joaquin
Steves.
said, go take some substances, go in there. We had at our second screening these two girls who just downed 2 bottles of wine. Boy, did they love the Parker Posey scene in the the most twisted way possible. But yeah, it was a blast. It has been very interesting to see the movie end, and people just go, "Are you serious?" And then
Yeah.
no one knowing when to get up during those credits. So if you
Yeah.
are willing to go see the Ari Aster movie, go support it. I know it cost a lot more than his last two combined.
Yeah.
I
What do you
enjoyed
think? Is
it,
Ari
but for
Aster's
most of the
career
twists.
over?
Nah, bro, I'm so excited to see what he has next. The next one's
course, yeah.
the Western, right?
Yeah, I think so. With Joaquin again.
Hey, they did a killer job with this one. I'm excited for it. But let us know your favorite Ari Aster film so far from what he's released. If you enjoyed this new one and your theories on it, because we'll be getting to those spoilers soon. We have a full review for this next one over here. Evil
Yeah.
Dead Rise. We got to catch this over at the South by Southwest Film Festival. We were there at the premiere. It comes from Lee Cronin, who we also saw his previous movie at another film festival over at Sundance. The Hole in the Ground was this creepy movie about this kid who finds a hole in the ground.
Mhm.
And while that movie was okay, it had a lot of creepy imagery. I didn't really care too much for the story in the end of it. He continues having very creepy imagery. Again, not too much of a story that I can connect with. I recently went and rewatched all of the Evil Deads, bro. Evil Dead,
Mhm.
the first one, The Evil Dead, is pretty solid. I understand why people like it. Evil Dead 2, I don't know when was the last time you've caught that one or if you've seen it. Evil Dead 2 is fantastic. If that is
Mm.
the epitome of what this franchise could be, then I am waiting for them to go back to that goofy Sam Raimi style. This feels like the junior to the 2013 one. I don't know how you felt about that one.
I actually didn't see the 2013 one, but I know that one has more of a
I'm gonna buy you
reputation
a
for
copy. I'm
leaning
gonna send it.
further
To
into.
your house, bro.
I know you love the Fetty version, right? But
The Fetty version's great. You would hate the Fetty version. It's crazier than this one.
so you were underwhelmed by the humor in Lee Cronin's because there's some bits there. There's the eyeball bit that I chuckled at.
Yeah, there's some funny parts. I can see how they're homaging to it, but to me, a lot of this Evil Dead Rise felt like, yo, do you remember the originals? We're about to reboot.
Mm.
No, we just had the 2013 one. It feels like the second reboot. The closest thing I can connect it to is Ghostbusters Afterlife, pretending like the Ghostbusters from 2016 didn't just like appear and was the Force Awakens return to the franchise. I feel like they're rebooting it to a degree. I was a big fan of the 2013 one. I thought that they were able to go all out with the gore. This one, like I said, almost gets there. I think it's able to deliver on a lot of the gory elements that people will be satisfied with. I was satisfied with it for the most part, but there's an element to it where I want to get to know the characters just a little more, and I felt I had that better in the 2013 version.
Yeah, I feel like there's also an element because they're sacrificing the character so much and not really diving into that, where when they do start a horror set piece, like it kind of feels like it's just sort of happening. There's not as much of like a rise and fall of a introducing of the elements and then like a easing of the tension. It just kind of is
Hmm.
like throwing different scary things at you for the
Yeah.
duration. And I don't know, I just feel like there there are films that have given me a similar feeling to Evil Dead Rise, but have done it with a little bit more craft or I don't know thematic resonance than this one, which just felt like assaultive in a torture porn type of way.
It's to me it's right before that. I'm not fully
Yeah,
in there, but I can feel you. It's definitely not one that's going to convince somebody who is not a fan of these movies. However, that intro, I do have to shout it out when it hits, it
yeah,
hits. That beginning is fantastic. It is mixed beautifully, and I thought we were going to be in that element for a majority of the movie. But I am surprised that at least around us, this is not in Dolby. This is not an IMAX.
hmm,
Like I said, the Mario movie is still scooping up the IMAX, the
yeah.
Dolbys, Avatar is back in there. So this doesn't, at least around us, have a full premium release. So even though I'm not head over heels over the movie like that. It kind of sucks that people aren't able to see it in a Dolby release because that's exactly how I would recommend it for those who are looking forward to this. But hey,
Yeah.
the trailers are now done. You guys can watch the NBA playoffs, the hockey playoffs, without being assaulted
Right.
by this trailer anymore. But yeah, I'm curious
The
to see
movie
where they
did
take it next.
pretty well in its opening weekend.
Good.
Cool 23.5 million. So
That's pretty
feels like
decent.
we're not necessarily going to have to wait another decade for another Evil Dead film. Are you eager to spend more time in the franchise?
Yes. So they keep teasing this idea of bringing in the old Ash, bringing in the remaining one from the last one, and then whoever may be alive at the end of this without spoiling it, right? And then combining it together. They're trying to do what I know the Jigsaw series, Saw is trying to do right now as well, kind of bringing the whole universe into one. Yes, I would very much like that. That would be awesome for me. So, Zach, please watch Evil Dead 2. I promise you
Yeah,
it is
I'll do
not
it.
as gory. It's fun gory. It's actually fun gory. It is the complete opposite
Yeah.
of this torture porn that's there. But then do watch the 2013 one because that is even worse than what you think it is.
I'll watch
Oh,
the
man.
old ones for Raimi at least.
For sure. Evil Dead Rise in theaters. If you get to catch Adobe, lucky for you. Surprisingly, I did catch Adobe to this next one. One little theater wasn't playing Guy Ritchie's The Covenant in theater number 17. They actually had it out in a Dolby Mix theater right after they were showing all the Super Mario in the beginning. So I went at night.
Yeah,
You got one too?
I same for me. Like they had Super Mario throughout the day, and then I had to wait till
Right?
10:30 at night for the one Dolby showing.
Hey, I'm glad they at least had it because this is a
Yeah.
movie where I would pitch it as a military western, dude. Um,
Hmm.
it is uh, gruesome. It is a full-out war film. But what really resonated with me was Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim's performances.
Yeah.
First, we gotta talk about the title. Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. Gotta love it. Shout out Guy Ritchie for that one. I don't know how many more covenants there were before this one, but he was still able to get away with it in the poster. But
Yeah, is Guy Ritchie really at like Guy Ritchie's level? Like, it,
you know what I would have
I,
liked? Guy Ritchie's Aladdin, but what I would have really loved was Guy Ritchie's Snatch. That one just has a ring to it, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Uh,
not like Edgar Wright or Martin Scorsese are out here putting their names in the title, you know?
he's going for the Lee Butler there, but Guy Ritchie's
Yeah,
The Covenant is based off of a true story. It is a dude who was like a high-ranking chief overseas
U.S. Army
early
Sergeant.
2000.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2010s, and he specifically gets a new interpreter to join them after an incident that had happened. And the trailer, I'm not gonna lie, kind of spoils everything, but it is a true story. Another incident happens, which causes him to kind of be left by the wayside, and this interpreter, played by Darcy Lim, needs to help him out. Um, I don't want to spoil what happens at the aftermath, because that really is the first big hour and change chunk of the movie. It's just them getting to know each other. This interpreter kind of giving him advice on different things to do. Where Jake Gyllenhaal feels like, you know, the character that he's playing feels like he knows what to do here. They search for IEDs, but he doesn't really know the environment. And this interpreter, as he says in the trailer, isn't really there to translate. He is there to interpret and thus be able to help him to do his job more properly. How'd you feel about it?
Well, in some ways, it's kind of like an uncomplicated war movie, right? Like, especially in the modern era, as war has become a very like it hasn't it's not like two sides meeting on the battlefield, right? There's all sorts of espionage and intrigue and nuances, and our war films have started to reflect that more, but there are movies that are sort of treated a little more simply, and I feel like The Covenant just reduces it to some simple terms, right? The U.S. Army are the good guys, the bad guys are the people whose faces are covered, and you can't even see like their humanity. But there's still just like this really effective, inspirational story at the heart of this, of these two guys in Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Darcy Lim's character who become the like who become intertwined, right? Who become fated to help one another through the obstacles in their lives, right? They owe each other a kind of blood debt.
That. Yeah.
And particularly to see an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal, who I think is a fantastic actor. He's so great to see all the different roles he has. But this is interesting in that, like, while he's often got this very electric, kinetic energy to him, he's so much more steely, so much more reserved in this role, playing the kind of tough guy army sergeant. It's a bit of a different look from him. Like, I'm not going to put this necessarily in the Jake Gyllenhaal acting Hall of Fame, but it's a very good performance. Though the one that really took me by surprise was Darcy Lim, an actor I was not familiar with in this film, and really carries the entire middle section of this movie.
Literally carries the middle section of this movie. I agree with you when it comes to Jake. There was several moments where Jake Gyllenhaal just stares out into the distance. I ended up counting like 5 by the end of the movie, where an incident happens and he kind of just, it's in slow-mo, so he's not like dropping the ball in the middle of action, but it's just this broodiness that comes out of his character. Darcy Lim just had it in him, dude. I thought he killed it in the movie. He does a fantastic job, just getting fully into the character. As you were saying, Guy Ritchie is a dude who, as the chat was saying, dude's been busy this year. We had just covered a couple weeks ago. 2 movies,
yeah.
The other one that he had made in Operation Fortune. I feel like he has another one in the horizon as well. Like he keeps working. I like Hercules. The perspective that he takes. It definitely feels like propaganda to a degree. You can't deny that, especially
it's got to be that
they get rescued.
Top Gun Maverick, like we are the good guys, don't ask questions thing.
But at the same time, I do feel that this is a movie that's trying to put them in check to a degree, like as much as a movie can, in terms of what the film is talking about these interpreters who pretty much just get assigned and are promised a lot of things for their service, because they practically become traitors. They live there, meaning that they have to turn on everybody in order to be able to help who technically is, the invaders in that country. So this is a story out of all of the hundreds of interpreters out there where a dude actually decided to repay that bet. There's this there's a line in the movie where he talks about it being like a hook, and that's where I was really resonating with that Western style of it, of a dude coming back as this lone wolf to be able to help somebody. He's like, there's going to be this hook in me that's never going to let me go. It's invisible, but I keep feeling it every day. And that's the part I think really resonates.
They give Gyllenhaal a couple speeches like that where he's really able to kind of sell the emotionality of the movie, despite sort of being in that more reserved role. But yeah, I mean, even though it is a little bit simple in its characterization of the conflicts and of the people within them, it's still very effective and very just like, I don't know, rousing. I'd even say.
It was some
I don't
thrilling
know.
moments towards the end.
Yeah, yeah, very tense, and the
Yeah.
action's well done. You know, we talked about Guy Ritchie, but he's a guy who knows his way around an action set piece, and I even felt like he didn't go over the top with it like Zack Snyder like, but he even used that kind of speed ramp thing that he likes to
Yes.
do effectively in a couple spots here too.
Some nice overhead
Um,
ones. It was cool.
yeah, if I may just make like a really pretentious point, did it at all bother you the like sort of contrast between how sort of like motivational and uplifting this film is and sort of like the sad reality that it's trying to shine a light on? It's like there a lot of times when films based on true stories do this, they kind of leave you with like a bitter taste in your mouth through the epilogue, you know?
Yes. Look, I'll put it this way. I think the specific director we have here and the fact that Jake Gyllenhaal was in Jarhead
Yeah,
makes
better
me
war movie.
think, yes, that while this one definitely feels way more the troops will come save you, that it's still willing to it's kind of like trying to work within the space of not fully insulting it, but I
Yeah,
do think it puts it on check to a certain degree. The one spoiler
totally.
that I that it's not too much of a spoiler, but in the beginning there's this essence of them working under the radar. Like he needs to find these bombs, so he kind of asks for help, and he's like, "Well, if it's not working this way, maybe try another way." But I never told you that. So there's a lot of this, everyone's working without really checking each other. That
Right.
while they're getting things done, I feel the movie is almost calling it out because when you're
True.
working that way, sure, he's doing it for a reason, but eventually someone's going to be able to take advantage of that system of not being put in check. And what better way to showcase it than to just showcase it? So
Right.
I do think that's kind of insulting it to a degree. For me, also, Anthony Starr appears in this movie in a role where he is very much the American hero. And considering
Mhm.
that he too, my man, he has done a performance where I think he should have won an Emmy, where he is calling out America way more than any anti-military movie can, because he convinced people in that other role to do what? To believe that he was on their side. And then the last season happened, they didn't know what to think. So it could just be me taking, Jarhead, taking the role he has been, and thinking that they're being a little bit more subtle with it. Uh, but I can see people feeling a certain way depending on how they want to view the scenario. Because, yeah, you also have a dude where it's like Dar Salim's character. He worked for the Taliban. But this excruciating journey that he came on, if you do this, you too can be forgiven. And I'm like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously all of these stories are going to be complicated to varying degrees, but
It's still
overall,
effective.
as this, yeah, it's a very effective movie. Both
Yeah.
of them are pretty much standouts, and I would recommend it if you have that one Dolby screening that's playing after Super Mario Bros. Give it a shot if the trailer the trailer stood out to you. Keeping on it with these rated R thrillers, To Catch a
Yeah.
Killer. I was able to mention this a couple weeks back because I'm a big fan of Damien Cifron. He did Wild Tales, which I think is it's just fantastic. Please watch Wild Tales.
Mhm.
Argentinian director making, if I'm not mistaken, his American debut, or at least English debut. Zach,
Yeah.
what do you think about this one?
I thought that To Catch a Killer was a pretty solid uh police hunting serial killer style movie that also did a pretty interesting job of making it feel modern, right? Like this isn't trying
Mm-hmm.
to catch Zodiac or something like that.
No.
He's a killer that operates the way that we see a lot of killers work in modern day, like public mass casualty events, right? And I think that there's an element of this film that felt a little bit like uh Foreigner tries to explain America as best he can.
Thank,
Like
thank
I know
you, sir.
I know we have a lot of gun fatalities in this country, but I kind of feel like if the events of this film happened, we would call in the National Guard or something, not just rely
Yeah.
on Shailene Woodley. Um, but but at the same time, like there still is like kind of a fun, and maybe not a fun, but like an interesting, compelling, like trying to
Thrilling
profile
detective
the
story.
killer
Yeah.
and police procedural. Yeah. So as much as I kind of maybe rolled my eyes at some of the attempts to shoehorn in like different modern qualms with modern society, I still thought it was pretty effective in kind of like a I'd watch it on a weekend afternoon kind of way.
Yeah, I almost want to give it that junior price, saying it's worth the matinee. But if this was on streaming, that's probably the best way to catch this, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying about the modern things, there's a sequence early on where they don't know who in the building who's escaping might be it, so they start taking video of everybody in order to be able to capture their faces.
Yeah.
So they're trying these like new techniques, and that's what she's supposed to bring to the table. But at the same time, you're like, why her?
Yeah.
Out of the way that the way that the whole thing is played, you also have a pretty decent cast around her. That I think make it a thrilling enough adventure to follow. I think Ben Mendelsohn was pretty good because they bring up all of these
Hell yeah.
Jaws references of how are you supposed to handle a scenario like this? Do you shut down the city? Do you not shut down the city? Which approach do you take? And I thought he did a really good job with it. But overall, I do agree with you in that sense of having a foreign director kind of like sampling what they think America is. And there's no better movie than Tyrell. You know how I feel about that. It does not get as low as this movie does. But damn, was it getting close to that at certain points. So my barometer for it would be this. To Catch a Killer is pretty decent. I think if this gets picked up by Netflix or something, a thumbs up on that. I think it's worth the watch. Right under 2 hours, hour 59. It keeps you intrigued for the most part. I was never bored by it. So for that, I give it the recommendation.
There's this one part of the film where, like, Shailene Woodley's character is essentially like, I don't blame you, I blame the media that goes after clicks. And it's like, what are we even talking about?
What are you on, bro?
Like, there's no reason that Breonna Taylor's name needs to come up in To Catch a Killer, but it was there.
Nah, yeah, I'll leave it at that. To Catch a Killer, out on limited release, I want to say, but it should be available in virtual video on demand very soon. Two other ones. I had mentioned Other People's Children. It is out in theaters again, so this is my probably last one until we get to the best actors of the year, because she's making my list. But if you have not seen this one, this is in limited release at the moment, as well as limited release. Carmen, have you heard anything about this movie? It played at TIFF.
Mostly just that Paul Mescal's in it, and it's a weird retelling of the Carmen story, but not much more than that.
Carmen is if I'm not mistaken, Broadway play that has been reimagined. They're kind of even pitching it as a prequel to what Carmen would have been, and they've recast, they've rechanged the songs. However, you have a pretty interesting crew here, because it's not just Benjamin Millipede, who is a choreographer. So he's done a lot of theater, he's done a lot of ballets. He choreographed Black Swan. So he's already kind of been in the business of, really big art house features. Vox Lux, another personal favorite of mine, really likes Natalie Portman. Here he has Melissa Barrera, who is big in Scream now. What's up?
Aren't they married?
Who?
Him and Natalie Portman. I think they divorced recently, but...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. Well, look at him.
Or maybe they're still together. I'm not sure.
Hey, he's moved on to feature films. It would be pretty dope if they collabed then at that point. Get them together in a future one.
Yeah, still married.
Interesting. All right, that's fascinating. I'd like to see them do something. It would have been more interesting maybe seeing her in this movie.
Right.
The movie, look, I was a little skeptical of it. It didn't blow me away, but it's not underwhelming either. It has this... it's not fully unrealistic. Like, they'll go into song, but it kind of makes sense within the tone of the movie. It's not just someone breaking into a musical number. They're using a song to comfort somebody else who's with them. They're auditioning with a song, but it almost kind of feels like you're about to enter this across the universe type musical kind of outline. But what's interesting is that you also have some talent in here that I know is going to pique your curiosity. If I could pull him up here, I don't see him. Composer Nicholas Britell worked very closely in the making of this movie. In fact, there were certain sequences when we were watching it where we're like, hey, there's these piano pieces are coming a little bit more. If I could just get a you got the Succession scene there. So the music's hitting. The movie looks beautiful. The acting, look, I'm not the biggest fan of Melissa's acting. I think this is the best acting she's done by default. And then your boy, Mescal, he's even got some original songs in this. So there is possibly a longevity to this movie for some categories in the near future. Overall, they've stilted this release, so even if you were curious about this movie, it is very difficult to find.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna leave it at that. If you are a fan of Carmen, this may not be what you're looking forward to because they do a completely different thing. But if
Yeah.
you wanted to see something new, they do attempt something new. I'm curious to revisit it when I get a 4K copy of it.
I feel
But
like I feel like most people's curiosity in this one is very like Paul Mescal driven. Do you feel like those people are going to be satisfied with this film?
yes, because he sings and he's like in a Dago tee the whole time. So he's like the military boy there. He's just trying to do right and help this
Right.
woman cross the border and get to where she needs to be. So for that, yeah, that's the thing. It's one that very much leans on heavy visuals. You know, if they're not singing, there'll be some sparse lines of dialogue, but for the most part, they're performing. It's like it's almost becoming La La Land in the desert for them. So Carmen out. I don't know where, but if Zach catches it, we'll be talking about it later on. Curious to know people's thoughts on that if they catch it. Also in theaters, we will be covering these two next week for sure. There's so much out. When you're watching a 3-hour movie twice, you can't really fit them all in. But Chevalier is out in theaters. This one also played at TIFF. It stars the one and only Kelvin Harrison Jr., who I've heard is fantastic in this movie. And in particular, everyone keeps saying that the intro is so good.
Yeah.
The meat's okay, right in the middle, right? But then the ending is like just as good as the beginning, and that has me really curious. It's almost 2 hours long. It is playing in mostly all theaters, at least in Chicago. So I will be catching this one this week, as well as Somewhere in Queens, a comedy directed by Ray Romano himself. I saw the trailer for this. They started spoiling all the jokes. This is his first. I did not realize he had not directed before. I didn't realize he directed this one. This one also seems to have a pretty big release. It's playing in a bunch of theaters everywhere. Ray Romano, Laurie Metcalf. I mean, it looks pretty funny. So I have this one on my watch list as well. But if any Intercuties have caught any of these two, let us know which one we should have on our radar in the immediate future. Let's move on to streaming with a bunch of movies that none of y'all should have in the immediate future at all.
No.
Zach, take it away with Ghosted because I have no idea what they were attempting here.
Yeah, I call this one a fancy TV screensaver for people who don't think of films as art, because there's just no sort of creativity or inspiration to be found.
Not even, bro. Your screensavers are nicer than this. You have Fincher screensavers. You wouldn't even bother playing this.
Oh, no way.
You'd play Prehistoric Earth before this. Oh.
Yeah, it's a calamity. I mean, it's a movie that puts Chris Evans into the role of guy who got in way over his head, and like nobody has ever looked less like bothered by pressure than Chris Evans. He's completely incapable of playing flappable, you know? He cannot evoke panic. And like maybe if you gave his role to somebody like Andy Samberg or Kumail Nanjiani or somebody funny like that, he'd be able to get a couple of chuckles out of it. Without him, there's nothing here. They're like the whole thing is just filled with like complete boring, bland jokes. There's a runner about the like 37th best Beatles song that's integral to this movie. It's probably the worst script that Reese and Wernick have ever been credited on, and those dudes wrote G.I. Joe Retaliation. Like I don't get it at all. I don't get it. It's a romantic comedy, right? Where's the meet cute? There's no meet cute. She just goes to buy a plant from him for no reason. He's weirdly mean to her. His boss is like, hey, you have insane sexual chemistry. So he goes and follows her to her car and they spend 24 hours together. Like, what is it's just like a movie in search of meaning and of actual chemistry between its leads.
You know it's bad when they keep telling you that they have chemistry, right? Every 20 minutes,
we promise you they have chemistry.
They go through a drive-through. These guys, well, what will you have? I don't know, but you two have chemistry. Like they just needed to have it in every single time. Zach, why was he playing Zachary Levi in this movie? This was the most embarrassing performance from. He was acting like a child in this film.
Zachary Levi might have even been an improvement, and like I don't think Chris Evans is a bad actor. It's just so completely not the role for him here, and he's incapable of playing this kind of salt of the earth dude. He's Captain America, and they treat him like he looks like a schlub.
Yes, and she's about to be in the John Wick spinoff, and you can't even tell if she's the one fighting or if it's somebody else.
Right.
It is. This is a movie they should have kept in the drafts, but they needed to release something. You know, when you got you need to put out content, they oh I don't like this is a movie that is specifically meant for streaming. But every time we thought about streaming movies, we didn't expect it to have this big of a cast,
Hmm.
this big of a name. Dexter Fletcher, who directed this movie, this is the worst thing he's done by far, bro. I'm a huge fan of Rocket Man, so this is I really hope that he's looking for one because I see no other reason why he took that movie for Apple
Yeah.
other than he has something else he wants to work on and he needs to give them something. Uh, Eddie the Eagle wasn't this cringy, and I think Eddie had something. You even had The Offer over on Paramount Plus. This is
Hmm.
nobody saw this, and I know that this was better than Ghosted. The cameos in Ghosted have to be the utmost.
Oh my God.
They are the worst thing that has happened post Marvel, in my opinion. That has bled to another movie. At least what Free Guy did had this cringy. Okay, I get it. What was
Yeah.
the point of that montage, bro?
It really does feel like the studio jingling its keys at you. Like, oh yeah, you remember that guy from that movie that this guy's in? You remember them? They used to do things together, right? Like it's the
Remember the Disney
whole
Plus guys?
like I it doesn't make sense to me. The whole motivation of it is like to remind you of a movie that you probably enjoyed more than this one.
Not even it's so much worse than that it makes me think of when you finish a job when you're filming and the guys tell you, hey, on the next one you got me. This is it feels like they're all cashing in on the
Yeah.
favor that Chris Evans owes them for something, and I'm like, bro,
Hmm.
go create something new. You don't need to be a cameo in this overinflated Apple TV movie. I have yet to see
Yeah.
anyone who has enjoyed the film, or who even cares what this is about. There, there are better versions of this. Go watch Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Don't watch this.
Right.
Just wait for the new Mr. and Mrs. Smith. There is so many variations of this type of story that have been done better than this one. It just sucks that they're two of the biggest ones. They're not bad together.
Yeah.
Go watch Knives Out. This ain't it.
That's the thing. It's like it's not even that they don't are incapable of having chemistry with each other. They just are incapable of it without a great director behind the camera. And it kind of feels like Dexter Fletcher might not be that guy. I hate to throw some dirt on his name right
Yeah.
now, but I I agree with you. This is definitely the worst thing that he's done by a mile. So hopefully he turns it around because I'm not.
He's
I don't think I can sit through a lot more movies like Ghosted.
That's terrible. And then this man's done Gray Man too. Like, honestly, if he does anything on streaming, just steer clear. If it can't make it to with Chris Evans, if it can't make it to theaters, then it should
Yeah.
just make it to the bargain bin at
Do
that
we
point. But
do we need to talk about Chris Evans? Is this a problem now? Because it felt like it would be exciting when the MCU time was ending and he had that role in Knives Out. It looked like he was all right. Maybe he wants to dip his toe back into acting. And then since then, it's just been basically like $100 million bland AI seeming blockbuster after
ChatGPT
another.
scripts,
Yeah.
okay. But if you're gonna put him on the clock, are you gonna put her on the clock too, or is her are her schlubby movies not as bad?
Well, one of her schlubby movies got her an Oscar nomination, as much as I didn't like it.
Okay, well he got a merch deal with Lightyear. I don't know, bro. I think they should
They both should
both be
fire
on
their
the clock.
agents. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to readjust, do something different with it because I don't even see what he has on the horizon. The Scott Pilgrim anime series, like that's not good. She has more on the horizon, which has me more interested in the career trajectory. And I agree. I think at least Deepwater isn't boring. Blonde
Yeah.
isn't boring. But she needs to stray away from the Gray Mans and the Ghosted. So pretty much she just needs to stray away from Chris. So yeah, Chris,
Exactly.
you're on the clock. We'll see how it goes. No Lightyear 2 in the horizon. But if you are interested in Ghosted, it is on Apple TV Plus where you can go stream a bunch of other things instead of that. Over on Hulu, dude, the Super Trooper guys are back with Quasi. A quasi comedy. That's all I can call it because this is their take on a medieval times in France where they're all in makeup playing Quasimodo, the torture hunchback who created
Hmm.
all the devices that they needed back in the day, who may actually have a thing going on with the queen. Um, I like the Super Trooper guys. I don't have a problem with them. Super Troopers is dumb. Super Troopers 2 is even
Yeah.
dumber, but I don't mind them. But they have a lot of misses. And
Yeah.
this wasn't the worst, but this is definitely a streaming movie.
It wasn't their worst.
They have worse, bro. They have worse.
They have some pretty bad ones out there. I'd say this is at least close to their worst, if not their worst. I mean, look, I
Look,
agree.
I'll say it's
Super
worse
Troopers
because they
is
got
great.
Brian Cox to narrate.
Exactly,
And
they brought back
that should be counted against
Brian
them.
Cox. I think I liked Slam and Salmon more than this one, the previous one that Kevin Heffernan directed, but I can't say I love that one either.
Yikes.
Yeah, this is just I watched the first half hour of this one, so I don't really have a full review of it, but like it's a comedy. I watched half an hour of it and I didn't chuckle. So
I saw
yeah.
the whole thing, and I can't really say that people should watch it. So
Yeah.
Quasi is out on Hulu if you are curious. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't know if you heard about this, but you should have because I was raving about it last week. They pretty much brought back half of the Power Rangers in this 55-minute special. That look, is it great? Absolutely not. It feels though like they got the exact same people from the 90s to come back in without the 4:3 cameras. They finally got the widescreen. Maybe a little 2.4K for the cast they brought back, but they're back, dude. This feels like an extension of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Is it something that we needed? Probably not. No. They did it though, and it feels like it's a continuation. They sadly couldn't bring back half the cast because many didn't want to. Obviously, many are not here. They do a weird thing in the story of them trying to get not just a team back together, but stop Rita Repulsa, who has now come back as a robot. That's pretty much it.
Nice.
I was curious for it because I'm a huge Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan. It's interesting to see them still kind of combine the cast, and it just makes me think, like, if y'all are willing to still finance these reboots, these specials, we had the 2017 movie just sitting there. There is no better version of a franchise, I've always said this, as the Power Rangers, where you can literally have all of the series that have ever happened, and they don't kind of get in the way of each other. Like, there's no multiple Batmans without getting into a multiverse. Here, every Ranger knows, yeah, I'm the Red Ranger from this era and this era and this era. Like they're kind of in cahoots with each other. You don't have to enter these multiverses for this. So I'm surprised they haven't, extended it into something bigger. I tuned in for it. It's not getting the worst of ratings. I think there's potential for more Power Rangers stuff, but they've been really greedy with it. I've mentioned in previous episodes the fan version that they made over on YouTube. That one had a lot of eyes on it, but they got really, they were sticklers on the copyright for that. I think there's a lot of potential for the series, and they're not using it to the max. But if you were a fan of the old ones, good little follow-up here. I once I have my kid watch all the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, this would be a decent enough bookend, I guess, until they make an actual theatrical film. So if you're curious on it, Once and Always, out on Netflix.
Yeah, see, my mom never let me watch Power Rangers. She thought it was too violent, but what I don't understand is I got to dress up as one of the Power Rangers for Halloween one year. So like, why was I even into it if I never watched the show?
Who'd you kill?
I don't.
Once you put on the suit, you never go back.
I guess. Like,
what'd you watch? Digimon? For me,
nah,
it was
man,
Digimon Yu-Gi-Oh.
For me, it was like Wild and Crazy Kids and Real Monsters and Rugrats. Like, I don't know.
She let you watch Real Monsters and not Mighty Morphin Power Rangers?
Yeah, I don't get it.
That's more twisted. That was messed up.
She just didn't like the violent shit. Weird shit? Sure.
That's funny. All right. Moving on to the last two things that we have out in streaming, but more so virtual. Two little documentaries, Little Richard, I Am Everything, and then the profile piece on Judy Blume Forever. That's out on Prime. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I finally got to catch it because I only saw like 20 minutes of it back at Sundance. We talked about it, and it's not necessarily going to break your perception of her or like challenge the form of documentary filmmaker or anything like that, but she seems like a real sweet lady, and lots of people, and she means a lot to lots of people, and that's kind of nice. It's not as good as this, but it did remind me a little bit of, was it Won't You Be My Neighbor? Was that what the Mr. Rogers doc was called?
That was, yeah, but that one was better.
It was definitely better. And like got more into like the history and contextualized his role better. I feel like there's a better Judy Blume film to be made than this one that sort of just touches on a lot of things. But like it's very sweet. Like I can't deny
It is
how
sweet.
heartwarming it is. Yeah.
It's a promo piece, in my opinion.
It is.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I feel about it. It's more so like
It's
a
well
legacy thing.
timed. It's well timed considering Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret is coming out in a week or so.
Thank you for saying that. And Prime has been known to use documentaries to promote the really big movie that's coming out. And look, it's a fine enough doc. I think she deserves a better one, but yeah,
Yeah.
it very much feels like a profile piece as promotion. But hey, I'm really excited for that movie you just mentioned. I'm going to be talking about that one for my picks of the week because that's
Hey.
I'm ecstatic for that one, and that's why I know that a better documentary can be made of her. But another one, the Little Richard one, another one that we saw 20 minutes of and haven't been able to watch. I've been listening to more interviews on this, and it's been interesting to debate on the narrative that they take. So if anyone's caught the Little Richard I Am Everything doc, that is available. It was in theaters for like 1 week, and now you can catch it in the comfort of your own home. So a lot of really good
Cool.
Sundance docs are coming out, and it's not even any of the ones that are in our top 10. So there is a lot of good stuff that's on the horizon that's going to be coming from there. Zach, we move on to the TV series. We're starting off
Yeah.
with Netflix with a new show that debuted at the top 10 called The Diplomat. I haven't caught this show yet, but a lot of people are liking it. Zach, should I add it to my watch list?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it really depends on what you're looking for in TV, right?
Good
It's a
stuff.
series that it's a series that was created by Deborah Chan, who has spent basically her whole television career writing a lot of episodes of The West Wing and a lot of episodes of Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
And this show kind of feels like an even blend of them both. It's very talky, but it's melodramatic. There's political intrigue that sort of drives the story of each episode, but ultimately the big conflicts hinge on these sort of personal or romantic entanglements that kind of define the tone of the show and its characters. You know, it's all very like overlit in a very network TV kind of way that, at least to me,
Netflix
is
TV.
sort of like it's a bit of an immediate turnoff. But like, there's some amusing bits here and amusing bits of characterization. Uh, sorry, it's I always mix up her name. It's Carrie Russell, right?
Carrie? Yeah.
Um, yeah. So Carrie Russell stars as this woman who is uh, set up to become the ambassador to Afghanistan, and she's really
Mm,
excited to go somewhere where she feels like she's needed and do important work, and instead she's sent to be the ambassador of the UK, where she's mostly wearing fancy dresses and taking glamour photos, and just there's a funny sort of like fish out of water element to it too. But I think as it goes on, there'll probably be more of the like web of intrigue and lies and secrets being withheld, kind of in that Grey's Anatomy style of storytelling that will ultimately carry it forward. It's not really what I look for in a TV show, but I
mhm.
see why it's popular, because it's certainly like it's an interesting setting. There's totally like the promise for intrigue. It's just a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit tame for what I'm looking for in a show like this.
Okay. All right. Did you ever watch The Americans? Because I know that that was her last really big series, and people love The Americans.
Yeah, I've only seen some episodes. It's definitely
Right.
not as like
I
not
mean,
as
that's people's
nuanced,
favorite,
not
so
as
yeah.
quiet as the
Okay.
Americans. You know, the Americans feels very the I think the big difference is like sometimes in the Americans I don't really know what's going on, and I feel like I always knew what was going on in the Diplomat.
I feel you. All right, well, we'll see if this is another big hit that she has in her hands, if Netflix continues it with a season two. But it is out right now on Netflix at number one.
Yeah.
Number, I don't know what over on Prime, but it would be mine. Dead Ringers. You mentioned it as your recommendation of the week last week. I caught that premiere. All 6 episodes are out, which is crazy. I don't know how they decided over on Prime, but look, the first one was fantastic, and it seems like it's not even the biggest one. Zach had mentioned last week how it is Rachel Weisz and Rachel Weisz playing two twin
Hmm.
sisters who work at a hospital, but they're trying to get their own place and they're helping mothers give birth. One of them is also trying to give birth. The other one's starting. I don't even know what the other one's starting on. But it is such an intriguing show. The humor is fantastic. It's witty. It's shot beautifully. I love the artwork to it. The first episode's directed by none other than Sean Durkin.
Yeah, my boy. I didn't even realize until later.
That's awesome. Sean Durkin, Zach loves Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. The Nest was one of my favorites from that year as well. And then I don't know if you had mentioned this one, that it's technically a remake to a book that's specifically Cronenberg.
The Cronenberg.
The Cronenberg movie. So I haven't seen that film. I want to finish the series first, then go back and watch the movie. But I am all in. This is one where I am taking the time out, fully invested in this, and I would highly recommend it. It is a little gory, very mature, but that's why I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion of sex on it too, but I was mentioning last week, it does this really interesting thing where it's tying in like sex and birth, because they're these prenatal nurses, and they help with maternity, and I don't know, there's just a lot of really interesting elements being layered into the show. So maybe we're gonna have to finish the show, go watch the Cronenberg movie, and come back and do a longer talk about it.
I agree. It's worth it, and that's what we look for. So big thumbs up on Dead Ringers over on Prime. Quick mention, I know you had talked about it last week, and they started releasing it. This one, Peacock said, nah. This one needs a little weekly release, but they do have a couple of episodes out. You were thumbs up on this one for the most part, but not,
I don't know if I'm fully sold on it. Like I reserve the right to come back and say, this was a waste of time. But after the first two, at least, I found myself pretty intrigued by just the absurdity and mystery going on, Mrs. Davis. I haven't had a chance to go any further yet, but it is out now, so maybe you've had a chance to binge it. I'd be curious to hear if any inner cuties are enjoying the Peacock show so far.
Nice. Moving on to Hulu, we have 3 right here. I'll start off with one that I think you were able to begin. I completely wrapped it. It is coming out weekly, if I'm not mistaken, but technically it doesn't appear till 2 more days. So give your thoughts for what you've seen so far from this series on Hulu called Saint X.
Yeah, Saint X. It is. I feel like in some ways it's a little bit of like an old-fashioned streaming binge show where it's like where it's a mystery about a missing or like a mysterious death of a young woman and the ripple effects that has on her family and the community around them. This one takes, or at least sort of the inciting incident happens on this I guess it's supposed to be like resort? A Caribbean island. The island is also called Saint X, isn't it?
I think that's what they're playing on.
Yeah. And so this family, while on their vacation, the elder daughter goes missing and then ultimately turns up dead. And the younger daughter, through a plot that jumps back and forth in time, is sort of dealing with the fallout from growing up with this experience, her family's emotional fallout, and just the lingering mystery over what the circumstances were around her death. I wasn't necessarily like fully gripped by the couple of episodes I've seen so far. It feels like I don't know if I have like a good sense of character yet from it. I do think that the way the show is unfolding, giving you little bits of information here and there, and they're throwing out lots of potential leads. Like it puts you in that headspace of like trying to solve it, trying to get to the bottom of it, which is cool. But yeah, like I don't know. It's I don't know if I'm fully like on board with it yet. I don't know if I'm that invested in this mystery. How about you?
This one was put on my radar because I believe it's also A24, if I'm not mistaken. Because Drake also produced this and has a couple of his songs in it as well. So
Future as well, I think, is on there.
Yeah, well, his partner Future, not the other Future, but yeah, who he produces stuff with. So he did the HBO one, Euphoria, with him as well.
Right,
so this was like their next outing, and to me, I think you said it. It's like those old meant to binge right after another in terms of episodes type of series, because it's a mystery. To me, this feels like those old Freeform shows, back when it was ABC Family, then turned into Freeform.
That's a good call.
And they're all sitting here on Hulu. It's that type of show where it's a you can watch it with your family, but it's mature enough where you maybe shouldn't, but that's what keeps the intrigue there. I think the time hopping is what helps the show a lot, but then
Yeah.
eventually does kind of hurt it.
Mm.
Because like you said, it's really leading on making you believe, oh, could it be this character over here? Is it these people? And then kind of changes it from being something about who is the murderer as to why is the murderer. And I think that's where it shoots itself in the foot by the
Mm.
last episodes, and it kind of left a sour taste in our mouths because we were like, that's kind of like coming at it from a completely different perspective, and where you land the show on is interesting if you had set it up that way from the start, because like you said, it's in the early like 2000s that the story is taking place on the island, and then it's flash forwarding into the future. um, I'm curious to see how people react to it because again, this one has a couple of episodes premiering, and then it's going to be going weekly. So maybe this is able to garner an audience because compared to a lot of the other stuff that has done pretty well on Hulu that also came from Freeform, it's at the same quality in my opinion. So Saint X over on Hulu starting April 26th. I do have a recommendation for you. I don't know if you started this or if it was on your radar. There's a docu series. It's supposed to be 5 episodes, if I'm not mistaken, and 2 are out.
I've seen some ads for it.
I've been liking the docs, dude, from Hulu.
Cool.
The way they edit the Dear Mama documentary or docu series for Tupac it's beautiful, bro. Pretty much,
Yeah.
they're telling his story by telling his mom's story, because by telling his mom's story, you understand his. I think
Totally.
they should have a Kanye doc that goes that route. I think many artists being able to go back to the root of what gave them all this creativity to begin with would be a perfect avenue to kind of discuss them. But it's even a bigger deal here because obviously Dear Mama is one of his most prolific songs. That's a song I had on replay a lot growing up, and I love the way they're able to break down not just the lines in the song, not just the history with his mom, but they got some crazy talking heads here. Snoop Dogg, Eminem,
Hmm.
even for his own close personal friends, the way that they not even animate but CGI overlay certain elements to the way that they describe stories. So they'll talk about getting pulled over by a cop, and like just behind them there'll be like the sirens. There'll be like a silhouette of a gun that comes up from the side while they're still in that talking head frame. I think they
Hmm.
do a fantastic job in the pacing and the editing, and just really building up this world and finding a lot of archives for Tupac. Highly, highly recommend this one, along with the Rap Caviar that I had mentioned. That was just a bunch of vignettes and profiles for certain artists, but I like how deep they're getting into this one. And at 5 episodes, it's got my recommendation so far. Dear Mama,
Very cool.
the docuseries over on Hulu. And then probably the best thing that's been playing, the season 2 finale of Abbott Elementary. I think season
Yeah.
2 is just as good as season 1. I'm very happy because they've been winning so many awards. I wasn't sure if it was going to get diluted. They have not. I think they're still hitting on all cylinders. And we'll see what this round 2 does
Yeah.
at the Emmys. But what have you thought so far?
I mean, well, it's not just that the finale aired, right? But this was also the end of what was a really long season of TV by modern day standards. They did 22 episodes, which is virtually
Yep.
unheard of, in the 2020s. And I agree with you. Like, I thought there were maybe like a couple episodes here and there that weren't necessarily like their best. Nothing that I like turned off my TV in disgust, but there were a
Mhm.
lot that were excellent, and not only just like hilarious episodes, but they did a really great job of expanding the world and bringing in new characters, bringing in
Yes.
amazing guest stars. Ayo Debris and Taraji showing up on this season is just some of my favorite bits just watching comedy on TV this year. It's the kind of stuff that does make me feel like Abbott has like a good future as like a consistent hangout show that they can continue to churn out these long seasons that are really rewarding because we've been talking sometimes on the stream, sometimes off of it, about just stuff to watch while you're doing things, and Abbott is like a perfect hangout show. Watch 3 or 4 episodes of it, maybe stuff you've already seen before as you're getting some other stuff done, because the characters are so delightful. There's so many fun jokes. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily my favorite comedy on TV, but it's definitely one of the best hangouts there is available right now.
The Emmys cutoff is May 31st.
Yes.
So because they're so stilted on that one. The Emmys are until September, but the idea is like they're already getting the predictions ready, and obviously this is a big one that's there. I would be very curious to see us put a list together to see what we're rooting for, especially because by then we'll have our mid-year one. But
Yeah,
I'll
maybe we
give
should do
one
that.
critique, and then the three things that I've been loving of the show. My one critique is it's way too close to The Office. I still don't
Yes.
really care for the camera angle thing of it. Oh, it's a documentary crew. They finally gave a mention to that this season, even though it don't make sense when you rewatch it. But whatever. It's The Office bit. You like the zoom ins. You like staring at the camera. There is uh, also the storyline aspect between a love angle that they
Yeah.
continue to like. Nope, not yet. We're trying to go the eighth season, so we're gonna put it on pause. And I'm like, okay, this is very close to Dunler Mifflin stuff. That
Yeah.
said, though, my top three things to say that world building. I'm gonna give you my favorite thing that they've done. Continue to make the janitor. I'm blinking on the janitor's name right now
Oh
because
shoot,
he's
what's his
so
name?
mysterious. He doesn't have Mr. Johnson. He doesn't have a first name.
Yes.
I don't ever want to know his first name. Continue to make him this mystical being. I love that part of the show. Two, best guest appearance. You mentioned some really good ones. Best guest appearance, without a doubt, Vince Staples. He has killed it every single time he's been on the show. And then my number one thing, I think Educator of the Year is the best episode they've had so far. Because in my opinion, it's Quinta and it's Tyler almost reflecting on the awards that they got.
Mm.
And I'm going to just leave it at that. Rewatch the episode after you've seen all the interviews they had to do through the Emmys run. And I think that's them venting there. Those are my favorite types of episodes. I like Atlanta when it did that. I like Abbott when it does that. Yeah, it's my go-to sitcom on Hulu right now for sure. So Abbott Elementary, 2 whole seasons. And I'm with you, dude. 22 is unreal to do
But
in
at the
today's
same
age.
time, it's so nice from a consumer perspective that like
Yeah,
you
but
can actually sit down and watch a lot. Or like when I find sometimes I like to rewatch shows, but given how short seasons are now, that you end up just rewatching the same episode over and
a
over and
lot.
over. Like,
Yeah.
but I've already rewatched the new season of Party Down a couple times, but it's 6 episodes long. Like that lasts me a couple hours.
Like
Abbott,
a
it's
30
gonna
minute
take
album.
me. Yeah, exactly. Abbott, I
I
can
feel
walk,
you.
I can hang out with all weekend.
Yeah, but if I were to say audiences suck and we still complain when there's not a new episode out, so there's no satisfying us
Yeah.
regardless of. But we have been satisfied by one streaming service that is still HBO Max, so I will probably continue calling out HBO Max, HBO Max before HBO becomes just Max. Somebody Somewhere season 2 is arriving this upcoming. I don't know if it started already, but season 2. I thought it was a decent show. My buddy, I have a bunch of buddies who work on this. I didn't realize they shoot a couple of these scenes in Chicago. So if
Oh,
you are interested in this show or working on it, I'm not hiring for it, but it'd be really cool to work on the show because I've heard it's been very fun, a very fun production set. And
nice.
season 2 will be premiering on the 20 something, probably today, if not yesterday. But the one we're here to
I've heard
talk
good
about,
things about the show too.
great things,
But
yeah.
yeah, just yeah,
Barry, bro. Let's talk about the
yeah.
comedy
Let's
we
get
really
into
care
it.
about. And to me, it's still a comedy. The final thing to discuss is HBO's final season of The Assassin slash character actor slash I don't even know where you want to go with this, bro. It has extended to whatever you thought season 1 was. We're in a completely different ballpark here. Every character
Hmm.
has grown and like they would not recognize themselves from the pilot.
Hmm.
Where do you want to begin?
Yeah, because I mean, there's so many places we can begin. Part of me wants to begin with the cameos because the cameos were just so delightful on this
Oh,
episode.
may I? May I? If you
Please.
haven't seen the cameos, I highly recommend going to search them up. In fact, you can argue,
There is a link to YouTube.
and you'd be able to see them all there. Dude, Zach told me jump on this episode. Do
You
skip
have to
whatever's
watch
in
it.
theaters. You need to
Yeah.
watch Barry before tomorrow. And Theo appears, bro. Absolutely killed it. I've seen it. I've seen that specific scene like 10 times.
He's so funny in it. I don't know, man. Especially just that they named him Toro as well is such a funny touch to me. I mentioned
Uh,
I wanted to show you a thing that I found because he already
all
did
right.
an interview with Deadline where they spoiled that Guillermo was going to be on the show. Although
Mm.
I hadn't heard about it until I caught it. But apparently, Bill Hader is friends with Alfonso Cuarón, and that's how they were able to connect. He
Wow.
says here, I'm friends with him. I'm friends with Alfonso Cuarón. Alfonso was texting me. Guillermo says you don't know how to direct. They were just fucking with me while I'm shooting with him.
Bro, you know what I'll say about Bill Hader? That man knows a lot more people than we know. Because he too had some very special
Mhm.
pop ups this past week that we'll keep a secret. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Makes me like
And
it
that
even more.
and that was Guillermo's cane as well. So he
Really? Was it
he
his hat?
added his own touch to the show. But beyond that, I also thought that like deploying Fred Armisen was particularly hilarious. Like obviously they have a relationship that goes back all the way to SNL and a lot of their work on stuff
First
like
time, right? On the
documentary
show?
now. Yeah, the only time he's appeared on the show, and in like just like what is kind of a small role, but the kind of role that Fred Armisen has the rubber faced qualities to make
Yes.
hilarious.
He doesn't even like
Um,
talk. He's just sweating profusely.
but yeah, I mean, speaking of that Fred Armisen scene, things got kicked up a notch this week on Barry. There was a lot of just sort of dealing with new circumstances. Barry in jail, people like Kusino and Sally, uh, you know, having this newfound fame that they don't necessarily want because of their relationship to Barry. But in week 3, the conflicts got escalated. uh we have these really funny characters in Barry and NoHo Hank actually forced to get serious and start threatening each other in what was like a really
I like that.
brilliantly acted moment on the phone between them.
Yeah. NoHo's needed that. He's been used too much. He needs to know where to draw a line. I
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, we forget sometimes because the characters are so delightful to watch that like this is a show about bloodthirsty criminals, crime bosses, assassins, but like
It,
when they have to
it's a
turn
workplace
on the
drama,
toughness.
and you had a coworker who's just not doing what they're supposed to do.
Right, right. Did you have any takeaways from this episode?
I'm a broken record. Who's been my favorite? She continues to kill it.
Yeah.
She's finally doing her own acting class and being able to invert what she thought was a positive, right, into other people, not realizing how abusive it is. It's just it accentuates what I think has been the best part of the show. These cycles of violence that you don't realize. Obviously, to the degree of
Hmm.
making you an assassin, but also to the degree of being an actress who thinks that the methods that got her to a certain point are what she's supposed to teach others in order for them to get to that certain point. That you need to almost be as broken as the character you're trying to be. And the way they call her out in that scene was just great. All of her reactions. If it's her face on the frame, she has been killing it. I'm disappointed she didn't win. She didn't win last year. She's still my pick for this year. Still supporting
I mean,
because they're making her lead,
I
dude. She's carrying a lot.
I know. I maybe they'll change it up for this final season. But yeah, as for now, I guess she's supporting. By the way, we were talking last week about how they played 2 episodes from the first season from the 4th season at
Mhm.
once, right? You were worried that they were burning off Barry,
I don't like that.
and now
Yeah.
they're just going week by week. I was listening to the Prestige TV podcast, and Bill Hader talks about that. First of all, he said he was actually happy that HBO made that decision because if he feels like the season really kicks into gear on that second episode. But the whole reason that the thing happened was they realized the May 31st Emmy cutoff that if they did 1 episode a week, that would have taken them 1 week into June. So just by doing 2 episodes on that first week, the show will end before May 31st. It's all for the Emmys, dude.
Started earlier, but they didn't want to start it earlier because it was an episode that needed to have nothing in the way for Succession, huh? That's funny.
Yeah.
Wow. They'd rather double it up instead. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
good inside baseball there. Good inside Barry. Good inside Barry.
Can I drop a couple of Easter eggs on you?
Hit me.
All right. So I don't know if you put this together, but the person whose fingers go on the seat in the airplane in episode 1, that was the guy that Sally kills on the previous season. He then shows up again in the back row of her acting class this week. So she's also kind of being haunted in a way, not dissimilar
Wow.
to the Tar Ghosts or something.
I like that. That's really good. Or Beau.
And
If she's
and
seeing
then
how she wants to see it.
yeah, and then the variety actor who's played by Peter Fischler. So he has that moment where after he gets interrogated, he comes back and starts speaking only German. It was Patrick Fischler's idea that his character is constantly eating Skittles, and then when he comes back later only speaking German, he's eating Haribo gummy bears because Haribo is a German company.
So goofy. And I caught the Skittles too, because Skittles have been everywhere recently. The
Yeah.
Mulholland Drive guy, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right, funny.
I've seen ahead on to next week's Barry. It's the only episode that I have gone ahead with so far. You got to watch that one live too. That's another good one.
I'm assuming every single thing towards the end of Barry. How many are they gonna wrap with? 8? Ooh.
Only 8. Yeah.
Wow.
We're almost halfway through.
Couldn't get 9, or else the Emmys cut him off.
Exactly.
All right, well, Barry, it's been just as good as all the other seasons and has created a big Sunday, considering you have Succession, which we're going to be talking about right after this podcast in full spoilers. So if you have not seen that one, definitely make sure you go fit it in within the 15 minutes that we're going to go make coffee between this stream and the other stream, so you can go talk about it with us, or, just queue it up since they'll all be on demand after the fact. Before we get to our picks of the week, though, Zach, give a big shout out to all of the Inner Cutie patrons.
Yeah, we would like to thank those wonderful people who are supporting the show. They are Ewan, Ronette, Julieta, Tim, Elizabeth, Josh, Ashley, Brady, Marion, Michael, Mr. Kobayashi, Nick the Monty, LaShawn, Devesh, and Diana. Our Academy level members are Tushar, Cademan, Connor, May, Ricky, Joe, Janicia, Tyler, and Benji. And of course, a big thanks to the producer level patrons. They are Uden Veer, Sam, and Wiley. Thanks again for all the support, and a reminder that you too can become a member at patreon.com/intercutpod, where you can sign up for patron benefits like early access to Intercut episode outlines, access to the private channels on the Intercut Discord, and access to some Intercut episodes before we publish them as well as an invitation to our monthly Patreon Google meetings, all for as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/intercutpod. What you pouring there?
Coffee. If you're a patron, you can even smell it for free through our 40x feature. We did have a very interesting bracket last week's, because we told y'all that it was going to be difficult to narrow it down, and then to narrowing down from the other honorable mentions into the bracket. I saw what the Inner Cuties picked. We'll see how the Intercut one goes down after all is said and done. But we're still looking for a guest there.
24 movie.
And we still have enough time, because we're going to time it for the releases of, for the summer, the A24 releases of Talk to Me and Past Lives, which are two of our favorites of this year. So if you have any A24 movie that you would argue for, this is your time to let us know down below, just in a regular comment. Be like, hey, before you make that bracket, you need to have Mississippi Grind or whatever it is. Oh, make sure you take out Climax because it's not good. Whatever you want to tell us, make sure you let us know down below in the comment section, because we'll be rewatching a bunch of stuff. That'd be the other thing too. It's what movies they think we should give a second chance. But it's going to be a very interesting bracket. I'm excited for it. Let's get into our picks for the week. Zach, what
let's do it.
Is your first one?
I'm going to give a mild recommendation to the movie Sisu. It wasn't my favorite. I caught it recently on a screener, but I think there might be enough there for the action junkies, for the person in your life who really loves Liam Neeson movies, that it's worthwhile to watch. The film follows a gold miner who, after stumbling on a life-changing amount of gold, is confronted by a group of Nazis who try to take the gold from him. And then what begins is 90 minutes of just decimating Nazi forces in a variety of explosive ways. It's a pretty ridiculous movie. Like, if it's not going to be for you, if you're a person who watches and nitpicks, like, how did he survive that kind of stuff? Like, this is basically an immortal dude plowing down Nazis. But, like, if that sounds fun to you, and I'm sure there's a lot of people to whom that would sound fun, there's some fun action filmmaking here. There's some interesting set pieces, like an extended sequence navigating a stretch of landmines that I thought was pretty cool. I feel like it ends up being a bit repetitive in the way that like maybe a Becky got repetitive for me. But I know there's a crowd out there that does appreciate an action movie like this, so I'll give a shout at least to Sisu.
The trailer is so good. I love the trailer to this, and I really
got a
wanted
great
to
trailer.
love the movie. Yeah, I'm so underwhelmed. Like I want to give it the 3, but there's an underwhelming aspect of it that just made me almost set it at 2.5. I'm a little torn with. I'm a rewatch
I'm at
because they gave me
2.5.
the screen or 2 for it. Yeah, I just wanted it to be a little bit better. I don't know. There's a shortcut this takes that I feel some of the John Wicks don't, but I know
Yeah.
people have argued that the John Wicks kind of do. You see it here, but I'm with you in the same type of recommendation for Sisu, playing in theaters this upcoming week. What else you got?
Yeah, if you don't want to go to theaters, but you're also looking for some kind of action flick of sorts to keep you occupied.
They were playing this
is
in
another
theaters.
Were they playing this in theaters?
Dude, Amazon's like, hey, we already got trailers at
Why?
AMC. Why not just come watch episodes 1 and 2? My mom was telling me, she's like, I thought this was going to Prime. I'm like, Prime thinks that they're a movie. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
So they did have some. Should you watch it in theaters or should you just watch it at home?
I think you can stay at home for this one. This is another mild recommendation from me, but I'm going to throw Citadel out there mostly because I'm going to recommend it to my dad. I know he'll enjoy it at least.
Okay.
To me, this almost reminded me of like the Pierce Brosnan era of Bond movies, ones that are a little bit like sexy and sleek and gadget focused, but also a bit like dumb and loud. This is maybe not quite as like cinematic as some of those movies are, but like there's like a easy watching quality to it. It does kind of like operate with a bit of a heavy hand, like there's somebody threatening to blow up a British Airways flight like in the first 5 to 10 minutes of this thing, and I don't know if like literally every leading actor on the show needed a case of amnesia for the plot to be explained, but like it's got sexy people punching each other, and it's not like annoying to watch. Like if we're gonna choose between this and Ghosted, honestly, it's no comparison.
Oh, that's not even fair when you put it that way. It does have that thing where they're talking to each other, and at the same time, it's a plan and it's foreplay for the both of them. So yeah, I can see the comparisons to Old Bond.
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people like Richard Madden, a lot of people like Priyanka Chopra Jones, Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci shows up and gets to be kind of snarky and fun.
The guy in the chair, yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy in the chair. So I don't know if it needed to like jump back and forth in time so constantly, but it's all right. Like it's a decently interesting watch.
6 episodes over on Prime, releasing weekly, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think 3 at first and then weekly after that.
Sounds good.
I'll give a shout out to Raging Bull. I just went and saw the 4K restoration of Raging Bull
that's right,
over in
the Fest.
Yeah, like at Film Forum they were playing it, and it's just a gorgeous print of like a iconic movie. Of course, I mean, just one of the great film performances of all time from De Niro, and then of Pesci, maybe even better in a supporting performance there. Yeah, just an all-time great Scorsese film, and no time like the present to start your Scorsese catch-up, because there's a lot of movies that you're going to have to go through before Killers of the Flower Moon. But if you don't happen to be near a theater that's playing the 4K restoration, Criterion released the 4K not too long ago, I think late last year. So there's you can get Raging Bull 4K, not too hard to find it, and then you can watch a classic movie in great style.
Decent. I still need to go to the Film Forum.
Yeah, dude, we'll go next time you're here.
Decent. This next one, have you seen any episodes?
I haven't. They might send it to us this week, but we'll report back after the premiere, because I think it's premiering this weekend, right?
Yeah.
So Love and Death. We were interested in this one for a couple reasons. First of all, it stars some actors we really love in Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemons. But intriguingly, Elizabeth Olsen is playing Candy Montgomery here, the subject of the Candy miniseries that Jessica Biel starred in last year for Hulu.
Yeah.
So this
Oh.
is another one of those like twin film phenomenons, except it's now like a twin limited
Miniseries
series
phenomenon?
phenomenon.
Oh, man.
um, what channel was that last one on? The Jessica Biel on? Was it Hulu?
The Jessica Biel one was on Hulu, and it was just
Yeah.
titled Candy. And then this one's going to be on HBO, and everyone keeps joking that by the time it's out, it's just going to be Max.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I trust the HBO brand a little more than
And the
Hulu. Although this is
cast.
Max, the cast is better too. I'm curious
Yeah.
about it.
I'm curious too.
I mean-
The last trailer that they've been playing the trailers before you watch Succession, and they've been kind of decent. So I'm
Yeah,
looking forward.
I mean,
to
look,
it.
this is like the first acting. Like, sorry, MCU fans, but the first real acting
Stop, bro.
that Elizabeth Olsen has done in what, like a decade, half a
This is
decade.
the first acting she's done outside of a green screen, for sure. For sure.
And then my last pick of the week is a new stand-up special. John Mulaney, Baby J. Don't know if you've heard, but John Mulaney's had some eventful things happen in his life the past couple of years. An intervention, a stint in rehab, a divorce, a marriage to Olivia Munn, and a new baby. A lot
Crazy.
of things to go through in your personal life, and then try to translate that into comedy. But I've always really enjoyed John Mulaney's stand-up. I think if he's not the best working stand-up comic today, he's easily in the top 5. So yeah, anytime he's putting out a new special, I feel like it's worth paying attention to. I'm curious about this one.
All right. See if he retells any of his old jokes. See how they apply now.
Yeah.
This is Netflix?
Yeah, I think this one is coming to Netflix.
All right. Tonight. Should be out on midnight. All right. My
Nice.
picks for the week. I'm going to start with one that is on my watch list that's coming out in theaters. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I had read the original copy my mama had way back in the day. One of her favorite books. And from what the trailers and posters and a lot of the reviews that are coming in so far, it seems like it's a pretty good adaptation for it. Like we said, there was even a documentary made for Judy Blume in order to promote the movie. So I have this one on my radar. I think it's probably the biggest theatrical release of this week alongside Sisu. Another one that came out last year and had a beautiful IMAX release. I made sure to go out on the last day it was playing, and it was freaking worth it. Brett Morgan's Moon Age Daydream is coming to HBO on April 29th. It's going to be the streaming release for it. I would highly recommend this one. I think it was one of the better documentaries of last year, and I love a documentary that understands its subject and fully edits, flows, all of it is outlined in the manner that you would expect of a Bowie documentary. Some really good credits as well in terms of just giving you all of Bowie's inspirations in a nice little list. And now that it's out at home, I hope people enjoy it.
I'm really excited to catch up with it.
Dude, if they release this in theaters, it's worth going to go catch in IMAX. Highly recommend that. I went to the Music Box. You were talking about going to the film forum. I recently became a little member of the Music Box.
Hold on, let me.
I figured.
There's the
You got one too?
solo layout. Show it again.
Oh, there you go. Right there, little Music Box
Yeah.
card. I was almost gonna get the AA24 one because of the things that they were giving out, but I said, you know what? I go to the Music Box. It's time to become a member. You get a couple little perks with it. So I went to go see this movie right
Support
here,
local film.
The Innocent. This was actually from a couple weeks ago. It was the same time that I went to go catch Doom Generation, and it was this French film that starred Noemi Merlant. That's all I needed. They pitched it as a thriller. It was quite delightful. Pretty much, she just plays the friend to this guy whose mother works at a prison, and she falls in love with an inmate who's being released. But is he being released from his life of heist? Who knows? I thought it was funny. They do some really goofy editing with this as well, and I thought that the entire last act of the movie straddles this line between being serious and unserious. They're putting on a performance, but not really putting on a performance. They're lying and being as honest as they can at the same time, and I would recommend it. If it's still playing in some art house theaters, give it a watch if you can. If not, it should be out on VOD in a couple of weeks. The Innocent.
Nice.
I don't know if you followed up on these guys, but we had reached out for this series called From. People were recommending it to us, and I'm like, nah, I just canceled my Epic subscription. And then everyone starts talking about this show. They did not give us season 1. but now they want to give us season 2. So Zach, make sure you
All
follow
right.
up on them because
Yeah,
season
sure.
1 got added to Prime. So I finally had the chance to watch it and we ate it up. It's just fun. It's obviously going to have that Lost-esque style, especially since you have Harold who's in this. Pretty much a family arrives in this town and they may not be able to leave this town, but they definitely cannot leave their house at night because whatever knocks at your window, you can't open, or your curtains, bro. I have been enjoying it. I think the characters are interesting. I think the world building may not allude to anything at the end of it, but man, is it peeling enough and letting you know little things about why they're stuck in this town that has kept me intrigued from episode to episode. So I am very curious on season 2. Almost curious enough. I can't give a better recommendation than this, than to maybe get a free trial of MGM Plus once it all wraps.
Hey,
So
there we go.
it is on Prime, and season 1's been worth it so far, and season 2 is premiering this upcoming week. My final one is for, yet again, another subscription service, but one that is at least free. Slip is a series that premiered over at South by Southwest and is now premiering on the Roku channel, bro. The Roku channel. It's free, but you still need a subscription for it. And look, I won't lie, Roku's kind of decent. It's a little bit like Tubi, but they're actually making originals that people want to see. So I'm kind of rooting
They
for
got
them.
all the
bought out
Quibi stuff now.
Hey, they might have a future there. And look, Slip isn't as great as Band-Aid. I love Band-Aid so much that I will always be there for the next Zoe Lister-Jones project, and I was so excited to see her in Beau Is Afraid. I don't know why I didn't recognize her in the trailers, but she appeared in Beau Is Afraid. She was one of my favorite parts of that movie. This is her... Oh, and Good Person, which I also mentioned. Slip is decent. It's her TV series that is playing it really close to the heart because she also had a creative partner who she split from. And this show kind of feels like the venting process after that. It is about a woman who, every time she climaxes, she ends up in another parallel, not just universe, a parallel relationship. So this is available over on Roku. It is 7 episodes long. I am just missing the finale from what we saw at South by, but I liked it enough to recommend it. So, in reverse order, Roku, go catch Slip if you're interested in it. I don't know if you had something to say about Slip. I know you were able to catch a big portion of it.
Just that I think I would have preferred it as a movie, but it's still pretty enjoyable.
And that's a good point because Roku got the Quibi, and I wonder if they also took the Quibi tactics of not receiving a movie but receiving a show. So I can see that. Slip over on Roku from, which is on Prime, or you could get MGM Plus if you want to, since season 2 is now premiering. The Innocent, which I caught over at the Music Box, but should be getting a wider release with VOD. Moon Age Daydream coming to streaming, but one of the best IMAX experiences of last year, and the one I'm most excited for in theaters. Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. Zach had
John Mulaney's new special, Baby J. I also had the upcoming Elizabeth Olsen, Jesse Plemons miniseries on HBO Max, Love and Death. I have a throwback in the 4K restoration of the Martin Scorsese, Robert De Niro classic, Raging Bull. And then a couple mild recommendations for the action head in your life on Amazon Prime Video or in some theaters, apparently. You can catch some episodes of Citadel, or in theaters, you can catch the Nazi hunting movie Sisu.
Beautiful. That's all for this week's show. Zach, let the people know where they can find more from you.
You can catch more from me at Zshevich, Zshevich, on Twitter or Letterboxd or Instagram, whatever. Or find more of my videos on Multiplex Show, whether that is also on YouTube or on TikTok or even now on Instagram. I got a couple new videos about this season of Barry, if you're curious to check out some more Easter eggs.
Zach has an entire Rumble outlet. He's going full out on every service that's out there. But he's going to be here every week on the Intercut.
Mastodon.
Every week here on the Intercut podcast, where we do recommend stuff that we did not mention, such as Yellow Jackets, which we had a question right in the last quarter right here about it. And look, I have not been liking it as much as season 1, but I've still been tuning in weekly. So that's how I'm feeling about it so far. But I'm not against it. So still a thumbs up on Yellow Jackets, but season 1 was just there's something about it.
Definitely feeling a little bit of a dip in quality, but I'm sticking with it.
There's a theory out there that it's a sequel, secretly to Lost. I don't believe it at all. But if it is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's taking a page out of that season 2. A reminder that you can listen to every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, on Anchor, on Spotify, on your favorite podcatcher. And you can catch a live video here on YouTube.com. You know, they say there's a YouTube clip that you can click down below. We go through the weekend must-watch every single Monday, not on Thursdays. But a big shout-out to all the Intercuties who listen live, all of the patrons, all of the iTunes listeners who leave us a 5-star review. Don't forget to leave us a comment, drop a like, follow the socials over on Intercut Pod. And until next time, keep watching movies, and we'll see y'all later. Take care. And call your mama.